Hello and welcome to week 4 in the psychology of personality. And here we are with two chapters again, chapters 5 and 6. Chapters 5, we're going to be focusing on the neo-Freudian perspective on personality. This is the people immediately following the emergence of Freud on the scene, mainly the students and the daughter, Anna Freud, being very, very large characters in the development and the further development of Freudian theory after Freud had gone. And chapter 6, we're going to be looking at Karen Horney and Erich Fromm. And these two people are put together in a similar way than we saw Adler and Sullivan being put together, as kind of like two theorists that sort of mingled in the same pond of theoretical perspectives. So we'll take a look at each one of these. There is, for this week, there are a total of 3 discussions and 2 quizzes. So make sure that you get all of those in. It's a heavy week for this particular class. So in chapter 5, we take first look at Anna Freud. Anna Freud was Freud's daughter, with whom he escaped Nazi Germany, is his only family member that survived with him. Anna, I believe, if I have my history right, Anna was in a concentration camp for a very short time. He was able to rescue her. The rest of Freud's family was killed in the Nazi concentration camp. So certainly a level of tragedy in this family. So Anna focused her work very much on the mechanisms within our mind, but again within Freudian theory, of how we go about protecting the ego, particularly when we are in we have all kinds of colloquialism for this, when we're damned if you do, damned if you don't, caught between a rock and a hard place, all of these things where you're in this situation where the options are bad either way or good either way. There's really no easy way to solve this situation. What does the ego do to reduce anxiety, to reduce tension? And she expanded upon Freud's use of the term defense mechanisms. Now, this particular concept has made its way into popular vernacular. We talk about people being defensive or they're in denial or any one of these. These were words right out of the work of Freud and his daughter. So these are powerful concepts that remain with us today from this set of ideas and theories. There's a whole list of them, though, in the course book. Whole list of different mechanisms that we engage in order to reduce tension. The issue with these that we have to understand is when we think about someone becoming defensive and they're in denial and they're regressing or any one of those things, Freud and Anna, well, Sigmund and Anna, to keep it on the first name basis here, the Freuds felt that defense mechanisms were functional. These were not necessarily bad things. It's the degree to which we use them. In fact, they thought they were very, very important aspects of a person's health. So let's say an individual, let's look at the classic one, denial. So someone's facing, let's say they get a terminal diagnosis. And we know from work from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, from work with death and dying and all of those things, that they define it at points that there's a period of denial. Like, no, that's not true. I'm not dying. I don't have that, That's just mistaken the test and all. And what we might see there is, if we look at it through maybe the popular psychology lens, is that person needs to face reality. We need to orient them toward reality. They need to start planning, and stuff like this. Freud and the Freuds felt that to a degree, the denial was a natural and healthy response to an overwhelming fact or overwhelming situation in which somebody feels. That is vital as the ego prepares itself to eventually face that situation. Too much right now, so I need to go into a defense mechanism, that or another one. in order to give myself some time to process this thing. So busting in and breaking up somebody's denials was not necessarily an effective tool unless the process of that particular defense mechanism moved into a pattern they defined as either level one, psychotic, you're holding on to this way too long, you're using it as a way to avoid reality. Number two is when you're using it in an immature way, and it's again keeping you from being able to fully embrace that particular situation. Then there's neurotic, which the avoidance component of moving, getting very, very specific about this defense mechanism, putting a lot of energy into it, and basically getting yourself busy in it so you don't have to think about the reality. And then there's the mature, which, now again, this is over time. We say an individual may engage in denial for a period of time. They may even shift into they might be immature about it. They might be neurotic about it. They might even be psychotic about it. But eventually, they emerge from it. They've had that time to contend with that situation, and they're able to now deal with it. We might even see this very quickly happen. Let's say you receive notice from your job, you're getting fired. There's something that's going on all over the country right now. So you think about individuals that are being impacted by the cuts in the federal government and whatnot, good or bad. I'm not making an argument about the validity or the logic or anything about that, but you get a notice in a job that you've been working for a long time. Yet a person's reactions to that after, like, I did nothing. I've been doing my job all these years. Why am I getting fired? I had this job gave me meaning and all that. An individual may start in using some of these defense mechanisms. They may get angry. They may repress it. They may deny it. They may do, you can look through any one of those, that list of different defense mechanisms and find ways in which people can account for that. And then over time, we're right in the middle of it now, so people are maybe very much in those states of mind. And then over time, the individual, should those cuts go through when they no longer have a job, will have to reanalyze where they are in life. They have to set new goals. What am I going to do now? And those kinds of things. If they stay stuck, you see a lot of that kind of terminology in Freudian work. If they stay stuck somewhere, that's sort of when the problem comes out. But if they're kind of pissed off right now, there's a certain okay natural quality to that. Just don't, get too pissed off and act out. Those kind of, we start to see defense mechanisms being irresponsible. So another component of neo-Freudian work is the whole notion of object relations. Now, in the Freudian world, what we see is the emerging ego, the ego, superego, emerging into the world and looking for security within a mysterious, mind-boggling world, forms attachments with things. We see primary attachments with caregivers. We also see attachments with objects. We see attachment with ideas. We see attachment attachment becomes a part of our life throughout our lives as we attach and detach from different things. Freud really put a lot of weight on the idea of attachment and detachment as being natural processes by which we mature over time. So we attach to our parents, but then eventually we undergo what he was a process called separation individuation. I need to detach from the objects of my attachment in order to fully mature as an individual. I need to become a unique, separate individual. On the cognitive level, we see this with theory of mind. We see this with the development of perspective taking. Those are the cognitive underpinnings of this kind of process. But then eventually we have this separation from the parts of our attachment up to and including the time in which we lose our parents. So when my parents passed away, it was that ultimate threshold of detachment that occurs of, was I sufficiently detached, still loving and still attached, but in a different way, such that I could manage the process of losing them as their lives ended. And so that process of object relations, how are we don't think of object as anything upon which we attach. So that is a big part of human development from Karen Horney's perspective. In the discussion for Chapter 5, I'm asking you to explain examples of your own defense mechanisms. And in the quiz, I'm actually asking you to take on that object relations idea and tell me a story about how that is manifested in you. So again, you're seeing in my classes, there's a lot of how do I reinterpret my personal experiences under the guise of a particular theory. That's really a lot of what the methodology by which I teach. And I think it's a nice way to see your own experiences as being very valuable teachers of points of transition in our life. Now, it wasn't Karen Horney, Anna Freud. But now we're going to Karen Horney and Eric Fromm. And here we see this idea of connectedness versus isolation. And even early on, this whole idea of what is the effect of technology in the modern world on our ability to connect with other people. Both Horney and Fromm really emphasize the importance of being connected with others. Okay, so Horney's focus was on neuroticism, which is fixation on things and the intensity of connections that we have, and the different personality styles that can arise from that. So she listed those personality styles as the compliant personality, affectionate, and connection to reduce anxiety. That's how we reduce anxiety. Aggressive personality, dominated by our survival principle. We connect and hold on to people. Detached personality, where we move away from others. And you see, there's probably in the recognize that a lot of these early theories, we get to incorporate them in a different way in terms of our understanding of the world. So I can look at these and I can say, not that it may be that there are individuals whose primary modality within this world is aggressive personality types and whatnot. But in hindsight, being way in the future after these theories being around for a while, we can look at this from a perspective of, well, there's different types of relationships that I have that bring out these different styles of interacting with people. So this is a dynamic concept in which we can understand how we go about dealing with the attachments in our lives and how that shapes our personality. Keeping in mind those attachments when we think about Freud's object relations, because all these people were either students of Freud or they hated Freud, or but Freud influenced them. But if you think of this from an object relations point of view, these are relationships that we have that are anchoring us in the world. How do we deal with that? How do we maintain these relationships? What personality qualities come out when those relationships are threatened? Consider that. Consider you're in a relationship and that person wants to break up. What is your response to that? And it might be, if you have a compliant personality, you come at that point of transition through affection and connection. If you're an aggressive personality, you might do everything you can to hold on to that individual. And there might be the other one that says, okay, moving on. See these characteristics reflecting this theory, this model, this approach, this lens in our real world. She also looked at exchange relationships versus communal relationships or exchange relationships were reciprocal, scratch your back, scratch my back sort of situations. And then you had communal type relationships, which were a shared responsibility for each other. So we can now look at a constellation of the people that we have in our lives, and we can examine them in each one of these. We may have a somewhat utilitarian reciprocal relationship with someone, and it's an expression of our aggressive personality. Like, I need this person in my life because they serve a purpose, and I'm going to aggressively protect that. And I don't want them to leave, maybe to the point of being obsessed with it. And what it relates to is the reciprocity that I'm expecting from that individual. I gain something by having something in this person in my life. You can examine all kinds of different areas and label different kinds of behavior using this theory. Eric Fromm comes in, and Eric Fromm reveals himself he is not a psychologist. He's a sociologist. So his perspective really looks at that combination of being an individual versus being part of a collective. And he really focused on individualism and the notion of quote unquote freedom. And this is where we see the expectations of society, the balance between me being who I want to be and my natural id expressions managed by my superego, and the influence of all those social expectations. To what degree do those social expectations, which manifest as the superego, help me to express my individuality or maybe suppress my individuality? Two discussions. Discuss your use of the three personality types. This is the compliant, aggressive, and detached personality. I want you to expand this. You don't have to talk about intimate relationships, although you can. You can talk about friends. You can talk about jobs. You can talk about situations in which you found yourself in, what skill sets, whatever. You can look at each one of those things, and you can determine the degree to which you are managing that relationship and attachment to that object, which could be a person, place, thing, activity, skill, whatever. Like my birthday was yesterday, so I'm 60 years old. So that's a milestone in the aging process. And the reality is I'm in very good shape, I'm very healthy, take care of myself, all that stuff. Things are going pretty well. But I teach this stuff. So I'm of understanding of, as an athlete, I'm approaching times in which I anticipate I'm going to have to manage my relationship with parts of my personality related to doing certain kinds of sports. So, for example, the person I was playing racquetball with for a very long time, who is significantly older than I am, decided a couple of years back that he no longer wanted to expose himself to the risk of injury. I couldn't beat him in a game. He was still a very good player. He was still very athletic, very much in shape. But he got to that age of which, if I have an accident doing this, it's going to affect me more because I'm older now. And watching him and then, anticipating I'm approaching the age he was at, that I will have to face my attachment to that particular aspect of who I am and manage it. And will I manage it, positively and affectionately, and see that and encapsulate that? Will I get angry about it and fight against it? Will I just dismiss it and move on? I don't know, but I'll get there eventually, letting go of the attachment I have to that particular aspect of my identity. You can see how widespread the applications of these personalities are. So the discussion asks you to use your Discussion A, discuss your use of the three personalities in terms of your attachment to a person, place, thing, activity, identity, whatever. Then, in a very modern and very timely aspect, looking at the effect of technology on freedom from Fromm's perspective. Now, technology is often, particularly communication technology, our cell phones and our ability to be connected online anywhere we go, really uses that word connected to as an advertising, saying here you can, this technology allows you to sense a connectedness literally on a global scale. But yet the ultimate outcome of some of that technology has been a tremendous sense of isolation. So we get this. So there's a great cartoon. I haven't been able to find it. It's one of the Family Circle. It's a very family oriented cartoon. You might be familiar with them, and it shows a couple. I don't know if it's the teenagers or whatever, but they're sitting on a rock on top of a mountain looking at the sunset, and the guy is sitting there with his phone and he's saying, wow, I'm out here and I've got my devices and I feel so connected. And the woman is in her thought bubble, is looking at this beauty surrounding her and says somewhat along the lines of, I don't think you're connected at all. You're not in the here and now and this beauty of sense of a different kind of word in terms of connection. But that sort of plays on Fromm's idea about how modern technology, even though it has the ability and does connect us with people. My brother, who lives on the other side of the continent, I can talk to him face to face with technology and literally have a better connection with him because of that. But yet, at the same time, technology creates a barrier. It's a false sense, maybe, of connection that is different than those other uses of the word connection. So all of that, you know what I'm talking about. Go in there. Let's have a discussion about that. And then we're left with a quiz that kind of focuses on Karen Horney's work, where the quiz asks you about Karen Horney's self-realization. There's where you will address perfection, ambition, and triumph. This is what Horney says was the focus of those different personalities. My goals in life are perfection, ambition, and triumph. You can almost think of these as motivations. Almost bad analogy, but think about Maslow's hierarchy. This is sort of like three bricks somewhere in there. Three bricks of motivation here. We have perfection as a motivating factor. To what degree is that part of who you are? Ambition, success, claims, and entitlement. And then triumph, actually in a positive or negative way, but beating out, being number one, or getting the job and somebody else didn't, or being number one in the race, or something like that. That's where we get the triumph. Different than ambition. One has to do with, triumph has to do with really, in a social manner, achieving beyond others. That's not necessarily the goal within ambition. So, to talk about yourself in those areas. Again, every one of these assignments has to do with taking the theories that you're learning about and self-examining aspects of your own personality. I hope you're finding that engaging and part of a growth process, certainly the way I learned things. So that's it for this week. I look forward to all of these discussions when I see them online. Have a great week and take care.